So,
Okay.
as a quick introduction, Lisa is here to talk to us about Eastern European research, which I know there's a lot of interest in our area in that kind of and those kinds of relatives that we have. And I do not have that expertise, so I'm very glad that she is here. I'm going to ask her if she could tell us a little bit about herself, being that I left her bio by my desk, which I apologize for. So I am now, oh, Lisa, do you want questions at the end with
Yes.
a hand up in the chat?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Mhm.
So if you would, if you have a question during the presentation, if you would in chat, type your question, and then at the end, Lisa will answer the questions. So thank you all for coming, and here's Lisa.
Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks for having me as your speaker. My name is Lisa Alzo, and this is 10 Things Every Eastern European Genealogist Should Know. I've been a genealogist for more than 30 years. I speak at national conferences, for webinars, institutes. I'm a freelance writer, instructor, and lecturer, and I've published 11 books, including the Family Tree Polish, Czech, and Slovak Genealogy Guide. And you may have seen my articles in Family Tree Magazine, Internet Genealogy, and many other publications. But I'm really excited to be here to talk about Eastern European research. And this is an introduction. So it's geared towards the beginner, but if you've been doing Eastern European research for a while, hopefully you can take away some tips from this session. And I also put all of the relevant resources, websites, and other information in the handout in the syllabus. So if you do not have a copy of that, it's PDF format. I am sure that they will get that to you. So thank you so much. And I'm going to turn my camera off while I present, and then I will come back on during the Q&A. So 10 things every Eastern European genealogist should know. And in this session, I'm going to show you how to maximize your Eastern European genealogy research with the 10 key things to know before you even begin. So I'm going to jump right in and just get started. And the number one thing when you're starting your Eastern European genealogy research is you have to have an understanding of names and naming practices. This is my paternal grandfather, John Alzo. So my name, Alzo. It is a Slovak name. Everybody thinks I'm Italian. It is not an Italian name. It's Slovak. It's an unusual name in a particular area, mainly in Eastern Slovakia. But when I find my grandfather's records in the United States, he immigrated in 1910. I will see him mostly as John Alzo, Johnalzo. But when I go over to search for him in records in Europe, in Slovakia, Hungarian kept records, I will not necessarily see him listed that way. So I need to know the different versions of both the first names and the spellings of the last names. And this is important when you're dealing with various Eastern European languages. So I would look for the name Jan or Janusz, which is the Hungarian form. Sometimes I also see the name John as Johann or Johannes. And so it just depends on the record keeping at the time. And we are going to talk about geography and administrative influences as well. But knowing the correct versions of the names is important when you're searching. And so I recommend that everybody read this article. It's called Mutilation, the Fate of Eastern European Names in America. And you can just Google this and you will find this article show up, mostly on the Polish Genealogical Society of America website, but I have seen it in other places as well. But this is an excellent article by William F. Hoffman, and Fred, as he is known, talks about all the different ways that Eastern European names get mangled basically when they're put into records, whether that's a handwritten record or transcribed for digital records and indexing. And it just talks about all the different formats for different Eastern European names and Slovak names, Polish names, Ukrainian names, Czech names. They're all a little different. They all have their nuances in their languages, and how names are transcribed and transliterated. When they're put into records in different countries makes a difference. So this article will give you all the background you need to know as you begin looking for your ancestors' names. The other tip I like to offer when I'm doing searches, and in particular when I'm doing searches online, is I always make a chart, and I just make a simple chart, usually in Microsoft Word or in some format if you want to do Excel. But I put the name of the person I'm searching, so the surname, for example, and then any phonetic variants, because in Eastern European languages, the phonetics are extremely important. And so I've seen my ancestors' name spelled very different ways. So the ALYZSO is the Hungarian version of the name. I've seen it as ELZO, ELZA, very commonly ALSO, because Z and the S are so similar, but it's all often misspelled that way. I've seen it as OZLA, AOLYZSO, so many different ways. And so I just make a little chart. And then for females, so when I search Slovak names, females they have the OVA, that's a suffix. If you're doing Hungarian, you'll see NE. If you're doing Polish, you'll probably see the SKA, SKA. So there are different endings for female names. And sometimes in databases, if you're doing an exact search and you have that suffix, you might be missing somebody. So I always add the female spell versions of a name as well. But it's just a simple chart. And then I usually keep track of how I find in my research log that I do, how I find it in each record. And sometimes you just have to be very creative and think like a transcriptionist. Sometimes if you're used to indexing records and you're reading handwriting and you're not sure how to correctly spell a name, you can be certain that the person who indexed it was probably as unsure. So I always say, think like a transcriptionist. How many different ways can your name be misspelled? And then also first names have variants. And as I said, Jan, John, Janish, different. You might see, I've seen my grandmother listed as Elizabeth, Lizzie, Liz, Beth, nicknames. So you have to take account of that, and how you see them in American records won't necessarily be how they appear in the European records. So that's names. The second thing that you need to be aware of, and this is even more important than the names, is the place of origin. So you have to know the name of your ancestral town or village to get the records that you need. And it's best to always start with the records on this side of the ocean first. We are very tempted now to just jump into those church records, church books that we see in online databases like Family Search or MyHeritage or Ancestry or other archival databases. But really, you need to know how to sort your person from another person with the same name. And you may think that your name sounds unusual in the United States. But when you go back to that particular area they're from in Central and Eastern Europe, it might be like a Smith. And so you have to really be able to narrow it down. And most of the time, you will get this information from records that the immigrant created after they came to the US or Canada, if your ancestor went to Canada. Usually, and name changes didn't happen at Ellis Island. That is a myth. And usually when they went to create a record, a work record, a marriage record, a petition for naturalization, that's where you will see variance in name changes as well. So I'm going to give you some ideas of where to search. So I've broken the places, the record sets to find your ancestral town or village into 3 categories: best bets, hit or miss, and long shots. And I also want to point out you should be seeking every possible record you can get in North America, in the country where your ancestor immigrated to, because that is where you're going to find all the details that you need. And you can't just stop at 1 or 2 record sets. You need to be doing that reasonably exhaustive search and thoroughly looking for all the different records. And not all records are created equal. Some of them are available online, and others you might have to do some digging in an archive, in a library, in a repository, or even write away a letter or a request to a government office. Okay.
Okay. So sorry.
That's quite all right. Not a problem. So, yeah, so some records are better than others, and some you will have to search extra places for. So you just need to be aware that we're so used to the internet and records that are online, but a lot of times, depending on the state you're researching in, you may have to use another method to retrieve that particular record. So let's start with the best bets. Usually we always start with home and family sources in genealogy. We say start with what you know. So if you're lucky enough to have any papers from your ancestors, any kind of documents, that's where you should start and see what's listed on those. If you don't, you're going to have to do some extra digging or ask cousins if you have people you've connected with, or if you've done DNA testing and discovered you have cousins. You want to ask everybody that you know, do they have any kind of documentation? And usually the best sources to look at are church records, so baptisms, marriages, burials. Civil records can be problematic sometimes. So a death certificate, for example, may just have a country. They might not have the specific village. But if you look at the equivalent, if your ancestor did belong to a church, generally that priest, minister, rabbi would know their congregation. And a lot of times these villages are put in those records, or there are some notations in them. So it's always good to look for both. Naturalization records. And that's you want the first papers, also called the Declaration of Intent to become a citizen, and then also the petition. So just having the certificate, maybe you found a certificate with your ancestor's picture on it, that's not good enough. You have to dig deep into either the local court, or after 1906, the federal government took over the naturalization process. So the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service, USCIS, will have, they have a whole request page that you can request these records. But they will often list the place of birth in a specific village. Passport applications, if they applied for a passport to go back, and most of the time, it just depended on an immigrant's circumstance, but sometimes you'll see those. And Ancestry does have passport applications in their immigration database. Fraternal records, if your ancestor belonged to a fraternal organization, like the Polish Falcons or the First Catholic Slovak Union, there are a lot of these societies that are still in existence, and they usually keep good records. Also, sometimes some ethnic libraries will have copies of these records. So, for example, at the University of Minnesota, they have an immigrant records collection, and they do have some Eastern European fraternal societies, and they've kept those records, but they're not available online. Ethnic newspapers, there are a lot of ethnic newspapers that were published. And if you're interested in newspaper research, there are many different websites that have them, paid sites and free sites. Chronicling America, which is the Library of Congress, loc.gov, they have some ethnic newspapers. Now, a lot of times these might be in the language of that ethnicity, but at least you can try and see what exists and maybe pick out your ancestor's name. So ethnic newspapers, and a lot of times libraries, genealogy societies, especially university libraries in big cities where immigrants would establish their cluster communities. So for example, Cleveland, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Detroit, etc. They might these libraries might have ethnic newspapers. So those are some best bets for them. So let me just show you some examples. This is my grandmother's petition for naturalization. So I did have her certificate, and so it lists her petition number, which let me know that she was uh, naturalized in a court in Pittsburgh. And so I was able to go and match that, and I was able to find her petition for naturalization. And it does list her last foreign residence. It says Hanagovsa, and it gives her date of arrival, the ship of arrival, and also her certificate gives a picture because it was a later naturalization. So you can sometimes see what your ancestor looked like as well. So this is just an example of a petition for naturalization. So hit or miss records, as I said, vital records, birth, marriage, death. Again, the civil records may not be comprehensive, but church records might give more detail. Passenger lists. Now, older passenger lists, like before the 1900s, give really bare bones information. So you might just get a country there. But if your ancestor came during the peak years, for Eastern Europe, so, say 1880s and onwards, then you can usually, on later passenger lists, find an actual town or village. Now, they may just give a point of reference. So you have to be careful with those, because sometimes the immigrant would just put their city or place of point of reference. So, for example, if somebody asked me, where did you grow up, or, where were you born? And I would say Duquesne, Pennsylvania. Not a lot of people would know where that is. But if I said Pittsburgh, that's a point of reference. So immigrants often did that. Social Security applications. So these are called the SS5 forms, the original applications. And this is, you can usually request these through Freedom of Information. And there have been some issues with privacy. So there are some, like, less than 120 years for the immigrant being born. Some of the information may be redacted, but a lot of times you can request them, and you can see a birthplace, where a specific village. Military pensions or draft cards will often, like World War I draft cards for men, will often list a specific village. Sometimes cemetery records, sometimes probate, land, court, town histories. You might have immigrants that settled in town there, and they did profiles on the town. So you might have, these are the places where immigrants came from in that town. So again, these may be available in repositories, libraries, town offices. they might not always be easy to get, but you should check all of these. And again, they are hit and miss. So my grandmother's passenger list, on her naturalization, it gave the date. So I was able to find her coming through Ellis Island, 1922. And on this is a nice one. It's 1922, so it's typed. There are a lot of columns. There's a lot of information, but it does list that she is traveling with uh, Maria Strucka, and that is actually her niece. But this passenger list said that they're both going to their mother, which is interesting. But my grandmother was going to her sister, her niece's mother. But on this list, on this passenger list, there are notations above my grandmother's name. There's a number, so that does indicate there's a series of numbers that indicate she did file a petition for naturalization. And it also says that she was hospital discharged. And my grandmother spent some time in the Ellis Island Hospital because she was ill upon arrival. And she did eventually make it through. But these are the kind of clues you need to look for on these passenger lists. And again, later ones have more information, earlier ones might not have as much. Long shots, census records, city directories. So generally, when you're looking at a census record, you're just going to get a general locality for a place of birth. So, this is my grandfather and the family in the 1950s. So you'll see PA or you'll see Czechoslovakia. So in 1950, the census, my grandfather's listed as a laborer in the steel mill, but it just lists, where he came from, and that's Czechoslovakia. In the 1930 census, he's living in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, so you may have to look in more than one location. But on this one, you'll see that it has his citizenship, etc. In 1921, it has that he came to the United States, and at that time he was an alien, AL. So by 1950, he was naturalized. By the 1940 census, he was naturalized. But so you have to look at all the different census records. And so, my grandmother, same thing. This shows her 1922. She was an alien in the 1930 census. So you have to, you're just going to see the general information. You're not going to see specific places of origin. In the city directory in 1931, they're listed, but they don't have any specific village names, but they do at least place them in between censuses. So that's why I said, looking for information, you have to look at all the different records. So while this doesn't have a specific town or village, at least gives me another place to put on my timeline. So some city directories may have more information. This one happened to not have as much information, but again, it's hit or miss. This is my grandmother's baptismal extract. It's and shows that she was baptized in Milpoš, which is a tiny village in eastern Slovakia. And I had this paperwork from my mother, kept all my grandmother's papers, but I at least had something to go on. But her naturalization petition said her last place origin was Hanagovsa. So that's kind of a question mark. So which one is it? And it's actually one and the same, which I'll explain in just a minute. But the other thing I have is my grandmother's passport, and this has her information, and it says that her domicile is Hanagovsa, and it has her picture, and it has all this information description about her. It also has the Hungarian spelling of her last name, Sztraka, because this wasn't long after World War I, so there was a dissolution of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Slovakia merged with the Czech Bohemia and Moravia, and they became Czechoslovakia. So there's different administrative things at play here. But it's interesting how some of her documents say one thing and some say the other. So you really just have to kind of do your due diligence. But determining the ancestor's exact town of origin is the key to successful research across the pond. So that leads us to geography. And so you need to know geography. That's the third thing. Current versus historical geography. And we're dealing with all these different empires in Eastern Europe at one time or another. The German Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Russian Empire, the Ottoman Empire. Modern day Poland, as we know, it did not exist. There were 3 partitions of Poland at one time. As I said, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, they were one. Now they're separated again. And so you have to know all these different time periods to know where to get the records and where you're looking. And then the tools that you will use are maps, atlases, and gazetteers. And one thing I always recommend is if you're looking for a village, type it into Google and see what happens. Often you will get a Wikipedia page. And so this is Hanegovsa, which is listed on my grandmother's records. And it tells me where it is. It's in the Prešov region of northeastern Slovakia in the Sabanov district. And it gives a little history of the village. It gives some information on genealogical resources. It says there was a Roman Catholic Church and a Greek Catholic Church, which is important. The state archive in Prešov is where a lot of these records reside. And it gives some links. It gives some statistics and surnames of living people in Hanegovsa, and it gives municipalities in that other district. So sometimes searching in records in a nearby village, maybe your ancestor married somebody from a nearby village, or maybe they moved around. So you have to kind of know this geography. And so doing just a basic search, and Wikipedia, you take it kind of with a grain of salt. Like, you always have to verify the information, but most of the time you can get some good information to start with. One other thing that sometimes they have are websites for these villages. And so my grandmother's village, where she says she was born, Milposh, has a website, and one of the external links me to this website, milposh.sk. The SK means that's Slovakia. So when you're doing Google searches, also go to the country Googles. So PL for Poland and SK and HU for Hungary, because you may get different results. And so this Wikipedia page for Milposh lists that there is a website. So I can look up the website and get the information on the village there. Now, my grandmother had multiple place names. So we see Milposh on her baptismal certificate, her passenger list, Hanegovsa on her passport, naturalization documents. Which is it? So there are often online aids or books. This book, These Names of Villages of the Slovak Republic, is a really great book for towns like in Hungary or Slovakia. And I use this to find out what the village was called over time. And you'll see Hanegovsa had many different names. And then Milposh was actually a hamlet of Hanegovsa, and it was only incorporated as its own place in 1950. So it was actually just an extension of the neighboring village. So, both of these are correct on my grandmother's record, but these are the only kind of things when you're looking at maps, place name books, gazetteers, etc. The website for Milposh has some really great pictures, has pictures of the churches, has a history. Now it's in Slovak, but you can use your Google Chrome and translate the page. And so it's really an interesting website. It has a lot of information. Also, how to contact the mayor, how to contact the churches. So always look for a website for your ancestors' village. And so this is an example of some of the different things that are on that. And I use, Google Translate, and it translates it roughly, but it's good enough to make out the information. The other thing you want to do is use Google Earth. Google Earth is a wonderful tool, and it lets you travel the world without leaving home. And you can even narrow in on small, tiny villages on Google Earth. And so here is a Google Earth page of Milpoche, and this is the church. I've been to this church, and I've been to the cemetery. Sometimes people will post images. They'll map things out, and so you can look and maybe see some pictures every now and again. So I went there. This is me in front of the Milpoche sign. And if you see, Milpoche and Hanagovsa are right adjacent, and there's other villages nearby as well. So, it's good to know both, historic names and name changes. Sometimes you'll find these, detailed old maps of villages. This is from Family Search Microfilm, and I was able to see, these old names on these drawings. And so there's some great free map resources that I'll just quickly tell you about. The Foundation for East European Family History Studies, or FEEFHS.org, is a great free resource. They have tons of maps in their map library, and you can click on any of these maps in blue, but it gives you German Empire, Russian Empire, Austro-Hungarian Empire, and like 1880s, and Galicia and Hungary and Bohemia. And then there's some other general maps: powers in Europe in 1894, dominant religions from 1618 on, and different other specific types of maps. And so you can click on any of these, and a lot of these maps come from the David Rumsey map collection, which is a great online resource, and you can go and check those out for free. You can search for different countries, different places, and you can zoom in on these maps and get a good picture of a place during a specific time period. And so this is Bohemia and Moravia, and this is from about 1831, and this is a pretty detailed map to show Bohemia and Moravia, which eventually became Czech Republic. Now, the other tool that you want to look at is something called a gazetteer. And these are basically geographical dictionaries, which are available in, online. There's some online. A lot of them are in print, and a lot of them are still on microfilm through the Family Search Library in Utah. One good one is the Genealogical Gazetteer of the Kingdom of Hungary, and this is by Jordan Oslander. And these books are available at the Family Search Library. Also, sometimes through interlibrary loan, you can get them. I've also seen copies that you can purchase on eBay. People sell them. But this is a really excellent gazetteer that gives great information for the Kingdom of Hungary, which covers a lot of territory in Eastern Europe. And then if you go to Family Search, so familysearch.org, and in their topic, you can search for a topic under their wiki, and you can type in gazetteer, and you can get an alphabetical listing by country, and just go down and select the country that you want. So, for example, Poland has a ton of gazetteers, and it will give you some for Prussian Poland, Russian Poland, and Austrian Poland. And there's some very specific gazetteers. Some are for modern Poland, and some are for historic time periods. So Family Search Wiki, under Poland, there's a gazetteer category. You can use that to get more information. This one gazetteer is called the Geographical Dictionary of the Polish Kingdom and Other Slavic Countries. And that is available online, so you can link to it through the Family Search wiki page, and there's a whole explanation of how to get to it and how to use it. But for example, this town Galweo is it what these gazetteers show is sort of like the main areas where they were located. So, is it in a valley? Is it near a river? It gives the parishes, so the dominant parishes. It gives whether there was a Roman Catholic Church, usually or a Greek Catholic Church, and it gives a lot of different information. Now, of course, it's in a foreign language, so you have to again use your Google Translate to determine what these words mean. But generally, you can piece it together. But it's really it gives the parishes PAR, and it will give you an indication of where to look today if those parishes still exist. So you can learn how to use this Polish gazetteer on the Family Search wiki. The Polish Genealogical Society has a link to this. They've changed their website recently, and it may only be available to members now, but sometimes you can use the Wayback Machine of internetarchive.org and go back to previous versions of web pages. But if you Google it, it may just come up, but there's an explanation also on the Family Search wiki page of how to use it. And so it also gives family FHL film numbers and abbreviations, a glossary, administrative units. So you can link to a lot of this tutorial information right on Family Search. But this is a really good one to use. There are many others, but these are just a few examples. The other website is JewishGen, jewishgen.org. You will want to set up a free account to access a lot of the information, but they do have this Discover Your Ancestral Town. I know they have been changing their website recently too. So some of these things may be in different places, but one thing you can do is usually search the Jewish Gen Gazetteer, and it's not specifically just for Jewish communities, but a lot of Eastern European communities are listed in here. And so you can search for a locality, and then you can see where it is today, how far it is from the capital city, and usually the longitude and latitude and more details. The Jewish Gen Communities database also is useful because some of these locations, it will give you all the different names of that village throughout different time periods. So again, you may have to sign up for a free account to access this, but it's pretty simple to do. And then they have more databases, and if you donate, you have more access to it. But they have a lot of great information on the Jewish Gen website. So now we'll move on to record keeping. So once you have the locality, you're going to be looking for records similar to what we do here in North America. Church parish registers are the backbone of research. There were different time periods where civil registration of records were required, and it varies by country to country. But for example, in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, 1895 was the date. And so they would have to the churches would turn their records over to the local government, and they would register with the state, and that was to keep track of men for conscription into the army, and also tax purposes, for taxation. And there's a lot of border and administrative changes you have to take into account when looking for records, and also dates and calendars. So was it the Gregorian calendar or the Julian calendar, which have different dates, and they have a different way of timekeeping. But this is just an example of a church register. This is my great-grandfather, and you'll see again the name is spelled Alzo. That's Hungarian. This is actually my grandfather's baptismal record, and my great grandfather's listed and my great grandmother. And so this is the church book, and this was the civil registration typed record that was created from that church book. So you basically see the same information, just in a different format. So again, you have to kind of drill down to district, locality, whether it's province or county, and then the district, and to find out exactly where they're being kept. And some are in local civil registration offices. A lot of these records are being digitized and have been, actually were microfilmed previously by Family Search, and now are being digitized and added to their online database. So this is just a full look at that record. And then just a full look at that as well. So it's basically the same information, but it's from the Roman Catholic Church, and this was the civil register. One tool that I recommend, not just for searching for immigration records, passenger lists, but also for calendar conversions, is the One Step web pages by Steve Morse. And that's Steve Morse, MORSE.org, O-R-G. Don't go to stevemorse.com, because that's a rock and roll guitarist and not Steve Morse, the genealogist. So you want to make sure that you go to the right website. But he has a great tutorial about this website and how to use it. And then he has, like I said, these calendar conversions and other interesting information. So if you want to know more about the Julian calendar, you can read it on Steve's website. But that's a good tool to use for a lot of different databases and genealogy records. And Steve doesn't store any data on his site. He connects with ancestry.com or JewishGen or other websites. So you have to, the Ellis Island website, so you have to take a look and see what it all interfaces with. Privacy laws and restrictions are important to know. Generally, 100 years is typical in most countries. Sometimes for marriage records and death records, you'll see 50 or 75 years. But there's limited information before the late 1800s. Also, sometimes records were destroyed. There were floods and wars and fires, and just like we have courthouse records that were destroyed, sometimes you'll find there are gaps in these records for whatever reason. So you just have to be aware of that. But the privacy laws are usually 100 years. Generally, if you're going for some later civil registration records, I always recommend working with the researcher who knows the archive, because they can prepare a request for you, and then you can send in information on how you're related to that person. But again, you just have to take account of the privacy laws. And a lot of times on Family Search, you won't see records put online that violate any privacy agreement. So generally, if there's more than one set that had been microfilmed or had been digitized, and they accidentally put something on that violates the privacy, they actually pull the whole collection, even if it's just one set of records. So sometimes you see records appearing and disappearing in Family Search, and this all has to do with the agreements they have with the particular archive. Where to find records online? The best place to start is the Family Search Historical Records Collection and Catalog. You may also see records on subscription websites like Ancestry.com and MyHeritage. They have partnerships with Family Search. Excuse me. You will also see that some archives, like in the Czech Republic, in Poland, they have their own databases, and some other volunteer websites that are indexing records. So it varies from country to country. But Family Search is usually a great place to start your research. Also, I recommend Cindy's List. That's CYNDIS, cindy'slist.com. This is the list prepared by Cindy Ingle, INGLE, and this has been online since 1996. There are no records stored on this website. It's just a listing of links to other sites, and it's organized by categories. And so you'll see there's a category for Eastern Europe, and you can go to the related country for that category, or you can go to specific types of record sets. And so I recommend Cindy's List as a great place to start because it's free and you can get a lot of links to different websites that are all vetted by Cindy. In Family Search, you can search historical records by place. The area you're looking at is continental Europe. Family Search has a lot of components to its website, but it has the records page, so you can search by name, or you can type a collection title in. You can browse all collections or browse places. So browse places is a good place to start because then you can drill down into the country and the area that you're looking for. Also, Family Search changes their website all the time, so these screens may look different. Just be aware of that. But the Family Search Research Wiki, you can click on this blue button and list all the localities, or you can click on the map and you can get a specific country and its wiki page. So for example, I could scroll down and go to, any of these countries down that way just by clicking on list of all localities. This is Poland's wiki page. Then each wiki page has general information. On the right-hand side, it has record types, strategies, tools like letter writing guides, language, word lists, gazetteer links, and so forth. Then there's these blue buttons in the center of the wiki page. So if you click on that blue button, it's going to take you to a table that gives a listing of online records. Some of them are Family Search, some of them are Ancestry, and some of them say index only. If it's paid website, it'll have a dollar sign. Some of them are MyHeritage. Some of them are Jewish Gen. There's one Poland Marriage Indexing Project at the Poznan Project. That's a free website that you can use. And so there are a lot of websites here, and some of them are actually Family Search collections. So you want to just go there. Each country has its own wiki page, and they all differ. Some have a lot of information, like Poland. Some have a little bit of information. So it just depends on what country you're researching. Once you get the records, you have to understand how to read them and interpret them. And you may see a plethora of languages. So they can be in Russian and written in the Cyrillic alphabet. They could be in Polish, Latin, German, Serbian, Hungarian, you name it. It can be in any language. So you have to understand a little bit about alphabets and handwriting and script. You don't have to be fluent in it, but you can teach yourself to read it. There's books and language dictionaries. Family Search has a lot of tutorials online that you can go to the Learning Center and take handwriting and language classes. There are word lists and guides available through the wiki pages. There are many translation tools you can use other than the Family Search tools. And then I said the dates and calendar tools like at Steve Morse. So there's a lot to reading and interpreting records. I recommend, in terms of books, there's a series of books called In Their Words, and these are for Polish records, Russian records, German records, and Latin records by Jonathan Shea and William Hoffman. And these are excellent books. I recommend them highly. Some of them are available in PDF versions. And if you go to langline.com, You'll be able to see them. Family Search Library has these. Again, some libraries may have these as well. You can also order them through the Polish Genealogical Society of America. So these are really excellent, thick books with examples of records, how to read records. There's a genealogical translations page on group on Facebook, and you can submit requests following their rules. Each group has rules of what you can and can't post and how much you can post and request. But you can often get an answer pretty quickly because you have people from all over the world looking at this Facebook page, and they're professional researchers that belong to these groups. So that's if you have a document, handwritten document from an ancestor that you want a quick translation of, maybe somebody would be willing to do that. I also recommend hiring a professional. I've worked with several professional translators. We now also have AI, artificial intelligence, coming into the mix. So we do have things like Google Translate and Transcribus, which is an AI tool. There are many, many other tools being developed, but you have to be careful with these online tools. They're good for words and phrases, but sometimes they don't get the regional dialects that documents are often written in. So you have to be careful. And if you're really interested in accuracy, it's always best to have somebody that reads and speaks the language translate the document for you. And I've done this many times, but these are good, quick helps if you just need to get an idea of what a record says or to move forward in your research. So number 8, finding records over there. So in Europe. So what to expect is that each archive is different. Each has its own rules and regulations. Most of them have websites now or Facebook pages that you can just Google and find them or link to through Family Search. Most of the wiki pages have archives and library wiki page attached to them. But as I said, there's smaller archives, there's bigger archives. Some of them are regional, some of them are state. They can often be difficult to navigate, especially if you don't speak the language. So I always recommend hiring a researcher to get things that are hard to get, because the researchers I've worked with will translate the documents. They will do all of the hard work for you, and you pay them a fee. And for me, it's worth every penny. Most of the reputable ones and the thorough ones, they will take PayPal as a payment, so you don't have to worry about figuring out money conversion. And then, if you can go there yourself and do what I call immersion genealogy, going to your ancestors' village, going to talk to the priest or the mayor, going to the archives in person, it's a really great experience to do that. I've been to the Prezhov archives. And as I said, they're all different. Some of them, I've had experiences where they'll say, sure, we'll give you the records, just give us 10 minutes and come back and we'll get you a copy. I had one smaller archive. I was there with my researcher, my guide, and he had to go out and buy these stamps to purchase copies of the records, and they made me stay there. They said, oh no, you have to stay here. I don't know what they thought we were going to do. And my researcher had been there before. I think maybe the archivist was just in a bad mood that day, or because I was an American, maybe there was something, I don't know. But anyway, I was in this archive and I didn't know what to do. So I sat there, he went and got the stamps, I got my copies, and we left. Other archives were very cooperative. So it's really hit and miss sometimes when you're over in Europe. But, you can always do your legwork first and just kind of see what the requirements are. Or, like I said, consult a researcher. Hiring a pro, the Association of Professional Genealogists has members from all over the world. Legacy Tree Genealogists, they have researchers for Eastern Europe. You can ask fellow researchers on Facebook, in Facebook groups, or in your societies. Ethnic genealogical societies are great for recommending researchers. I found my researcher through the Czechoslovak Genealogical Society. So these are, all different ways to find the professional to give you that extra help. And as I said, immersion genealogy, I've done this many times. I went to my grandparents' villages. I sat with, this is my godfather, Jack, and we sat in front of the baptismal font in the church where our grandfather was baptized in Kuchen. And so that was a wonderful experience to actually go to the church and walk in my ancestors' footsteps. Number 9 is you want to leave virtual breadcrumbs. So plant your family tree online, whatever website you want to put it on. This way you can find cousins. Just make sure you source your information. Always make sure you cite your sources, which we'll talk about. And don't take things from other people as always being accurate, especially if they don't have a source. You have to always verify information. DNA testing, that can really open up different possibilities for connecting with cousins and relatives. Blogs and social media, there's 3,000 genealogy blogs. There are Facebook pages for ancestral villages. Most of my villages that I research have their own Facebook page, and I've been able to connect with a cousin or two through them. And so social media, just keep an eye out for different things, that are different records that are coming online. All the companies, Family Search, they all have social media presence. YouTube has a lot of great information. I've seen virtual tours of villages on YouTube. And so that can be also very useful as a tool. Writing blogs, I write the blog, The Accidental Genealogist. I've had cousins contact me because I wrote stories about my Slovak ancestors on my blog. And finally, number 10 is we always have to cite our sources and record information. I always use a research plan to map out what it is I want to find, where I might possibly find it, how I'm going to go about tracking it down. And I'm very specific. I want to find my great grandmother's death certificate. And then I make notes of where I need to go and what are the steps I need to do. Then I record that information in a research log so that I can keep track of the positive and negative results and what I've searched so I don't keep reinventing the wheel over and over again. I use genealogy software, and then always make sure you construct proper source citations so people know where you're getting your information from, whether it's from an interview with Aunt Betty or a DNA test or a Greek Catholic Church record. You need to cite that source. Evidence Explained by Elizabeth Schoen, Shown, Mills, Mills, is the Bible on source citations. There is a website called evidenceexplained.com, which has quick lessons and information on how to purchase the book. Most libraries, reference libraries, have this book. And this is the one that you want to use for the proper format. For research logs, you can find a free one at familysearch.org on their wiki, and you can download that. So it's basically, date you search something, what you searched, website or call number, description of the source, comments, etc. You want to keep track of what you're doing, even if you're using genealogy software. I like to have everything I'm searching for an ancestor in one place, and then I can just go and quickly reference it. So to summarize, Eastern European research is challenging, but it's not impossible. If you learn these 10 basics, you'll be good to go. I mean, you'll be able to just get started, and it's going to take a lot of searching and a lot of patience because there are unique aspects that we have to take account of, like border changes, like languages. name changes. There's so many factors, records being in different locations and different formats. But the important thing is to never give up, because when I started 30 years ago, there was practically nothing online. And today there's so much more information that's easier for me to find when I start than what I had to do 30 plus years ago, which was travel around to repositories right away for records. And, it would take quite a long time. But on the other hand, not everything is online yet. So you have to have that fine balance between online searching and traditional research techniques. So using that combination will get you the best results. So my advice to you is keep searching, but don't ever give up. I just wanted to mention, I do have the Family Tree Polish, Czech, and Slovak Genealogy Guide that is available on Amazon. I also help put together these Eastern European special issues for internet genealogy. Sadly, internet genealogy has gone out of business, but sometimes libraries subscribe to these magazines, and you might be able to find them in a library, or you might see some for sale on eBay. So you can always check that out as well. But there's some different articles in those magazines. Also on my website, I have other publications, seminars, and other information you can find. You can contact me if you have any questions that we don't get to answer this evening. Just feel free to shoot me an email, and I'll be happy to point you in the right direction. So thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to hearing what questions you have.
Yeah, I'll get that. That was really good, Lisa. We do have quite a few of your books here at our library, so I
great, thanks.
want our patrons to know that they are available here. I should have had a list with me as to which ones they are. Let's see, I have to find chat now. Let's see. While I'm looking for chat, I have someone in the room with me that has a question.
Okay.
I have two quick questions. The very first question is, somebody that grandma came over in 1913, they wouldn't ever have had a social security number, correct? No.
In 19 when?
13, or even one that came over great grandma in 1960, she wouldn't have been given a social security number, correct?
Well, it depends. I mean, she might have gone to apply for social security.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, to get a job, to do a lot of things, you would have to apply for it.
Even if you were just boarding people at your house, is that considered a job that they would need social security?
Possibly, yeah. Because they are taking money from people.
Right.
Most of the time, to do anything, you really needed that social security number. So I wouldn't discount it. Usually if there was a benefit filed for somebody, like for example, a husband died and a wife collected the benefit, often you can still search the Social Security Death Index database on MyHeritage and some of the other websites. But that's only, the death index is only people that have applied for the benefit. So, but yeah, but I would not discount it, because most of the time, even if they came over later, it started in 1935, so it depended on how old the person was, but there wasn't any age restriction on getting a number. So I would not discount it.
Okay, she's got one more.
I got one more. I know you were talking about villages, minor from Hungary. Villages sometimes just vapored away and they condense them, but yet when I go to find something, I can't, because I don't know what that village, where it merged into for Catholic records.
Mm-hmm.
For church records.
Yeah. So usually, so when you go to Family Search, they're pretty good about cross-listing villages sometimes. And then also I find that just, using like those gazetteers and those online tools usually help to get the older names, the different names, and like the nearby villages. So, like I said, a lot of times you have to go, to these time specific gazetteers or period maps to kind of see what was close by. But usually in the Family Search catalog, they try to give corresponding place names, like also known as or previously known as.
Okay.
So so yeah, so that's worthwhile. And then yeah, a lot of times they would put the church records in a bigger nearby village. So like if I try to find Millpost church records in Family Search, I can't, but they're in with Lutina, because Lutina was where the priest resided, and he would go out to all these churches and then keep the records in the book in the Lutina parish. So this is just something you kind of have to dig deeper for sometimes. But as long as you have those old maps and kind of know what village was close by, you can kind of, get an estimate of where they might be.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have a question in chat. Ancestry is marketing pro tools. Would this be a helpful tool?
So my answer to that is it depends. Depends what your goal is. And full disclosure, I haven't tried the Pro Tools yet. I've just been too busy to actually try them. So, but it depends if you're like want to dig deeper into DNA. I suppose that would be a good thing. I would, a lot. I would try to define what you're trying to do. And again, if you're on Facebook, there are a lot of great genealogy groups on Facebook. So there's one called the Genealogy Squad, and they often give advice on what things are good and what you should try or what are best practices. If you're into DNA, the genetic genealogy, tools and techniques, or yeah, genetic genealogy. I always forget what it's called, but it's run by Blaine Bettinger, and that's a really great one for DNA. And they often discuss all of these new tools, especially like for DNA research. You'll have people that have used them and they'll share their experience. So it's always worth trying it and see if there's something specific you want to get out of it. There's no harm in trying it. And it's just like anything, you could always cancel if you don't want to continue. So
and that's what I wanted to say to Lee. I tried it. What I did is joined it for 2 months to see what it was like, and I got as much as I could from it during those 2 months. And the problem is, they're adding things all the time. I just had to figure out if it was worth it for me to spend that extra money when we're already paying a lot for Ancestry. So, and unfortunately, it's very hard to quit it or to stop it. You can't do it online. You have to call them in person. So that can be frustrating also. Let's see. One other question. Well, we have 2 more questions. One question here is, when you showed us the naturalization paper of I think it was your grandmother from the Pittsburgh area, where did you find that naturalization information? Was it at the archives?
So what I did is I contacted the county courthouse. So actually, those petitions at the time I did the research, I had to contact the Allegheny County Courthouse in Pittsburgh, and that's how I got the copies. Now, a lot of these are online. So I think Ancestry has some of them from Western Pennsylvania. And then Fold 3 has some too.
Okay.
So they also have the petitions and the declarations of intent. So sometimes, and then Family Search also has different collections for different states. So they're kind of, like I said, it's hard to pinpoint. It just depends on what state and what area you're looking for. But some of them are online, some of them are not. But usually, if it's before 1906, contacting the county courthouse, the local area, and if they don't have it, then they might have put them to like a state archive, or I know they did that with some of Pennsylvania's naturalizations. It went to the state archives of Pennsylvania. So it depends on the state, but sometimes they can tell you, well, we don't have them. And you can sometimes you can even just Google. There's also a website. It's called researchguides.net. Let me just put that in the. It's called researchguides.net. And it's by Joe Biney, Beine. And there's a online naturalizations index on those pages. They're free pages, and you can search by state. It'll tell you by state, and there's a listing of where you might be able to find naturalization records online, and whether it's a free site, a paid site, and that's a good place to start. So it's researchguides.net.
That's a great idea. Okay,
yeah.
One more question. How do you determine if they were registered Roman Catholic and some of the family are registered Greek Catholic? Is there a place where the birth records are combined?
Usually this is it just, and again, it depends. Usually the churches were separate. Usually, the Greek Catholics kept their records and the Roman Catholics kept their records. However, during the Austro-Hungarian Empire, Roman Catholicism was the dominant religion. So often you might find Greek Catholic records in some areas appended to the Roman Catholic records, or you will find sometimes even Jewish records in the Roman Catholic records, because in Austria, that was the dominant religion because of Maria Theresa. So sometimes, but generally, when you go to Family Search and you don't go by place, it'll say Greek Catholic Church records, Roman Catholic Church records, evangelical records. They're usually separated out because they're different churches, and they're usually digitized. They were microfilmed, whatever, separately. So yeah. And again, sometimes you have ancestors that may appear in one set of records, but then when they get married, they're in another church. And often, sometimes, if there wasn't a church in the village, they might have gone to a church in a neighboring village. So if they or maybe they even went to the closest church. So there are a lot of different circumstances where records could be combined, but most of the time they're clearly defined. These are the Greek Catholic Church records. These are the Roman Catholic Church records.
Okay. This is going to be on YouTube. Are there any other questions before we let her go? I'm not seeing any. Thank you so much, Lisa. This has been very informative. It's going to help me help others also. So
thank you.
Appreciate it.
I really appreciate it.
And
I appreciate you having me.
Arrive yet?
Yes.
Oh, did. Good. Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
So thanks so much again, and use the handout. There's all the websites are on the handout, and just good luck. it's, it takes a lot of digging, but it's getting better, believe me, because I've been doing it for a long time. And so the tools that we have today are really helpful. You just have to keep at it. It's just not always that easy. So we all want that easy button, but sometimes it's just not going to happen. So yeah, but you can do it. You just have to be persistent. But thank you so much for having me. Good luck, everyone. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for attending. We appreciate you, and hopefully you got something out of this also. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
I wanted to know the name of that guy.